Thank you so much for being here and being timely. And I, of course, appreciate that you are joining us in the evening. My name is Renee Angela Mock. I am your facilitator for the evening. Our session today is Becoming a Better Mentor, Honoring the Voice and Building Power. And I am looking forward to this topic with you. And I apologize if you can hear my dog barking in the background. So, quick navigation of your screen. We'll review this a little bit more in just a second. But the bottom right-hand corner is the chat where I hope you will introduce yourself to everyone. And there is this little here where you can raise your hand and add an emoji. And if you need closed captioning, there should be a button in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We'll review that again in a slide or two. So if you're not familiar with Mentor Maryland DC, we are the ones who are putting this on for you today in partnership with the Y, which you saw the Y's logo on the last slide. So we are an affiliate of the National Mentoring Partnership. There are many affiliates across the U.S. and we cover Maryland and D.C. And our shared mission and vision is to increase the quality and quantity of mentoring relationships across the country and to close the mentoring gap. That gap being that there are many young people who do not have a caring adult mentor in their life. And we do that in a lot of different ways. So when you get these slides, all these links will be clickable for you. So again, we are part of the National Mentoring Partnership. They provide so many things for not just us affiliates, but for you all, which include resources like the Become a Better Mentor resource, best practices and research. They have regular trainings. They have a collaborative mentoring webinar series, which I would encourage you to check out if you haven't already. And they host the National Mentoring Summit every January in DC. So if you're ever there, shout us out. We'd love to see it. Another major effort in this area for our offerings in the region is no-cost technical assistance. And I see Jeanette on our call, who is one of our technical assistance providers. So this is no cost through the National Mentoring Resource Center. If you run or work at a mentoring program, you can apply for technical assistance and get connected with one of our assistance providers, like Jeanette, and myself as well. And we will work on a project with you to build capacity at your organization. Hi, Charlie in the chat. We have the Mentoring Connector, which is the national database of mentoring programs and program opportunities for mentors and mentees. Here at Mentor Maryland DC, we manage it for our region. So if your program is not already in there, I encourage you to get on in there. Of course, we host trainings like this. I know some of you have been to trainings before with us, have been to our roundtables. We aim to build community as this is kind of our shared cause in the field. So we hope you will join us for future events. And then, of course, we have the elements for effective practice for mentoring, which I hope that you have been engaged in a little bit as this resource has just come out, which is exciting. And okay. Just checking if somebody could get in. So yes, this new resource is the foundational knowledge for programs on best practices, and we're doing a lot to get that information to you. So if you haven't checked it out, I hope that you will after this call when you get all these links. But I'm going to jump into logistics for our call, and I appreciate you all getting engaged in WebEx, which I know is slightly less familiar, but works good for us. So I appreciate you logging on today. So the bottom of your screen, you should see where you can mute, and we'll ask you to mute when you're not speaking. There can sometimes be feedback, so we want to make sure that one person is unmuted at a time. We'd love to see your face on a video, but if not, that's fine as well. You won't need to share your screen. I'm doing that for us. You can raise your hand with a little hand button at the bottom of your screen, send an emoji, and if you're ever looking for something and can't find it, click on those three dots and another menu will pop up. In your bottom left, you can see who's here with the participants button. You can open your chat. This is what the chat should look like for you. You can send emojis in here. You can send GIFs in here. You can tag people in here. So yes, we love to keep the chat lively as another way to connect virtually, to hear from you. Not everybody wants to come off mute all the time, which I appreciate. So please keep the chat lively with your thoughts. I would love to hear them, and your participation is very appreciated. We are going to use something called Slido today, and I'm going to drop that link in the chat and encourage you to open it. Slido is integrated into WebEx, so it should pop up for you when we engage in Slido, but you can also open it in a tab. And when you do, You'll see this joining as a participant. There will be a code on the screen that you will enter, and then you'll be engaged in our Slido activities. So these are things like polls, word clouds, and things like that. This screen will pop up next. We'll ask you to write in your name, and then you'll be able to join all those activities. So this is another way for you to participate in our training today, and for us here at Metro LC to check for learning, to gauge your engagement in the content. So we hope that you will engage with all of those as they pop up. And when you come, we will have some breakout sessions today. It should look like this when it pops up. It'll either be automatically moved, or you might need to press join now, and then you'll get a pop-up when those breakout sessions are closing. So there's a little background on what that looks like. Feel free to tool around now while I finish up kind of introducing us before we get into content. We are able to offer Credly badges. If this is a Credly badge that you may be able to earn for this section. No code just yet, Lonnie. I'll let you know when the code is ready. A Credly badge is a digital verification, essentially, that you attended this training and what you've learned. So there are all kinds of different Credly badges, from things like participation in a class like this, all the way to super professional certifications. You might have seen on the title screen, I'm a certified HR professional. That credential is verified through Credly, and there's all kinds of verifications there. So this is something that we're really excited to offer at Mentor Maryland DC, because we want folks out there to know that who is doing our learning, right? Who is learning this? Again, for us to gauge how much our field has engaged in really important content, like being a better mentor or all kinds of things. So we are excited to offer that to you. And to earn this badge today, your participation is required, and we'll need you to be on the session for 99% of the session. So please stick with us until the end. We appreciate that. Okay, I will just kind of move quickly over our community standards. We talked a little bit already about expectations, but essentially this is an open space. Everyone is welcome. We are acknowledging the status, not want to say status quo, the real lived experiences of young people and what it's like to be a young person right now, and all the isms that affect all of us, but particularly our young people. We encourage you to share openly. I'll be doing you with questions to reflect back on time, to review, kind of reflect on your own engagement in mentoring now. We ask you to listen even more openly, right? We have lots of different folks on the call from different places, and we want to be open to everyone's point of view, because these sessions are richer with your contributions, but also it can help folks hear something new that maybe they haven't heard before. So again, we say that this is a brave space where the things we know can be challenged, and our beliefs can be challenged as well. And that's, again, how we kind of measure our own learning. And of course, we want to have fun. We ask that you be present and engaged with us. So we look forward to that. Here is just a little about me. And I show this to let you know. One, I am certified. You can verify my credentials on Credly to present you this training content today. But I like to remind folks that as much as I aim to be neutral, right, a neutral party, every facilitator comes to a session with our personal lens and bias, and you do all as well. Right? But as a facilitator, I want to own what my lens is, what my experiences are. And when you hear me say something that may be surprising or that you didn't know, then you know that it is informed by these experiences and these aspects of my identities. So again, I will aim to be, neutral, nonpartisan, and things like that. But I come with experience, which again, all of our experiences are valuable. We just want to be mindful of what that lens is, so we're not pushing our lens onto other folks, but rather we're all expanding our own lenses. So a little about me. I hope and I'm sure that you'll feel that I'm qualified to facilitate this session today. Like I said, this is from the Becoming a Better Mentor resource, a resource created by the National Mentoring Partnership, whom I referred to earlier. And actually, let me put that link to the resource in the chat, and I'll send it in follow-up as well. But this is one of the first resources that they made specifically for mentors. So it is a 12-chapter resource. It You can engage with this resource in trainings like this. You can read it, you can listen to it. It's available in Spanish. But if any kind of caring adult wants to be there for young people, as it kind of says, this is a great resource to check out. So I encourage you to move deeper into the resource after this training. So I'm going to launch a Slido, but I'm also going to move to the screen. So if you go to Slido, this is the code right here, voice. But you also may see this open in the bottom or the right-hand side of your screen. So I want us to start by kind of reviewing our own experiences as young people as it relates to youth voice and what do we have experiences of which we were able to access our own voice. So my question to you all is, thinking back to when you were a child, do you remember any adult who treated you like a regular person and not just a kid? So when this is kind of a poll here, if you want to answer with this smiley face on the right hand side of the screen, that means absolutely yes. I have many memories of adults treating me not just like a kid. In the middle, a kind of neutral face, maybe kind of sometimes, and then our frowny face would be no, not at all. So I'll give you all a few minutes to answer. Thinking back to when we were young, were there adults who treated us like not just a kid? The code is voice, capital V. So a lot of in the middle and some smileys. Give you all a few more minutes. Okay, yeah. So we'll see how this shakes out. More than half of us are like, yeah, kind of, which is great. I love that most of us have at least some experience that we'll be able to reference as we dig a little deeper into this. And at least a third of us, definitely yes, which I love. And I hope, again, when we consider what these folks did for us, that we'll be able to implement that as well for our young people. So thank you for participating. Our next question is, oh, my screen just went wacky. Okay. The adults that treated you like a regular person, what did they do that was different than most other adults? So you can write in your answer here. What did they do that was different than most of the other adults who were just treated? So these adults that treated you like a regular person, what did they do that was different? Quite simply, they listened, right? There are a lot of adults that young people interact with that just don't spend time listening. And we're seeing this affirmed by multiple people. They're listening, right? Spoke and listened to me with respect and validated my feelings. That's so important. Trusted me to do what they asked. Ooh, trust. They asked me what I was thinking. I didn't assume I needed their opinions to be
Hey,
correct.
excuse me.
Ooh, Charlie, that is so good.
I say, where do we go?
You are unmuted right
Sell it to
now.
you.
Felix?
Can you hear me?
Yes. All right. Who's that?
This is Sutton. This is Charles.
Hey. Give me just a second, Charles. I'm not taking any answers right now. Spoke to me like an adult and allowed me to do things my parents didn't. Listened, asked for my input, and explained things in a manner that made sense for me to comprehend the magnitude of the situation. So they spoke to you to where you were at, it sounds like. Ooh, it allowed me to make mistakes. A really good one. So thinking back again to these actions when we were experiencing them, my next question for you is, in a single word, how did that feel when an adult was listening to you, when they were validating your feelings? How did that make you feel in a word? Important. That's nice. Sounds good. We all want to feel important, right? Heard. And heard is kind of the next step after listen, right? Like they really heard what we were saying and what we meant. appreciate it. Yeah. Well, important is getting bigger, which means more and more people are agreeing. And it made us feel important. Grown, right? Made you feel not just like a kid, made you feel like you were grown. And our young people are always growing, right? So it's important for us to acknowledge that. Independent, special, nice. And it seems like maybe everybody said important. I want to keep that in mind about how impactful that is. How important it is to feel important. And our young people don't often have the opportunity to feel that way. They don't have a lot of control or agency over their lives. They're not necessarily treated as like the most important person in the room. Typically, that's deferred to adults, to experts, and things like that. That can be really meaningful for a young person. Thank you for participating. We will keep it moving. So just a snapshot of our chapter. Again, honoring youth voice and building power. Written by Elizabeth Santiago, who I actually happen to know, and she's wonderful and amazing, as well as Minnie Chen. Each chapter is written by different experts with experience on the topic, as well as research on real people, practitioners, mentors, mentees in the field. But a little snapshot of our chapter is adults interested in elevating youth voice must learn how to listen critically and be willing to take a step back and share power with young leaders. Hopefully by the end of today's session, you will feel like you know how to listen critically and take a step back and share power with young leaders. So we're going to see multiple quotations from young people over the course of this presentation because unfortunately, there's no young people here. It's just me facilitating. I would love for a young person to facilitate with me. So if you know any young people who would be into this topic, please refer them to me. But for now, we're going to include young people quotations from young people in spaces where their voices were centered to give their point of view on this topic. So if I could have somebody read this quote from Sesha, which was from a session on maximizing youth voice. So please feel free to come off mute and read this quote for us.
There was a lot of distrust between me and adult figures. I always felt beneath and belittled by authority figures. By having that trusting relationship with my mentors, it taught me to have better relationships with adults later on in life. Now I'm more assertive and more comfortable with adults. Even though there is a certain level of respect I need to give adults, I learned that. I also demand a certain respect that young people aren't given just because we are younger.
I think we see a lot of the themes that you all brought up in your answers in this question, right? The opposite of belittle is kind of important, right? You hear a young person talking about respect and that making the point as well that young people aren't given respect just because they are younger than us. It's something that we might call adultism, right? So thinking about what our adults did for us when we were growing up, we're hearing that echoed by young people today. So whenever I do Becoming a Better Mentor, I like to kind of start with the what and the why. So what are we talking about and why is it important? So what do we really mean when we're saying honoring youth voice and building power? And it can mean a lot of things, from taking a step back and letting young people be in charge of planning activities and discussions, listening to youth interests and stated needs, and then making connections to broader context for them, intentionally creating a relationship dynamic that gives youth a sense of agency. You already heard me say agency, of which young people do not typically have a lot. But when we do, we find, give them that agency, that they become more comfortable in spaces with adults, which we heard Sesha say on the previous slide, right? So again, when we view our young people as partners, it allows them to build confidence in themselves, in their voice, and that is really powerful when we're talking about what we can do to honor youth voice. We'll talk a little bit more about unconditional positive regard and how mentors can practice that, but it is really important in this kind of relationship where we're truly trying to honor youth voice and build their power, right, as they are growing, And this also kind of, again, shared belief that all youth are poised for greatness. So this positive lens that we give to young people, no matter what. That's that unconditional piece. Your role, as I mentioned, then becomes a knowledgeable navigator, non-judgmental sounding board, and a partner whose goal is to affirm, support, and encourage. But there's actually another chapter of Becoming a Better Mentor about goal setting and support, chapter 10. And that chapter talks even more about what it means to be a knowledgeable navigator and not make goals for young people, but help young people affirm their goals and give them support and encouragement. So again, more things to kind of look into in that resource that support what we're talking about today. Honoring your voice and building power looks like knowing when to lead and when to follow, when to share your point of view, and when to open yourself to a different way of thinking, which requires practice and skill. Right. So at the end of this session, it doesn't mean that we're done honoring youth voice and building power or how to do it, right? It is a practice. All of these things are a practice, and we can get better and better at it. We can build those muscles so that the more and more young people we come into contact with, we're better at doing it. And then, of course, context means everything. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the long and short of why it is important, youth need and want to know they have power and can leverage the confidence they are building in their mentoring relationships toward achieving their broader goals. So many of programs that we either run or are involved in, right, talk about what are our youth goals and how can our mentor support it. And when a young person is more confident, which they can build in a relationship with an adult who is honoring their voice and power, you can get that kind of great guidance toward those goals. Young people are looking for partners and guides who see the greatness within them, right? Potential, we may call that, and are committed to nurturing that greatness. So are we invested in our young person? Not just invested, we really believe it too. So again, that may be a practice. We may catch ourselves, right, in disbelief about young people. We're having reductive thoughts or deficit-based thoughts at times. It is normal and natural because our society does not center young people. So again, this is kind of that practice piece that we're talking about. I'll allow if somebody could read this next quote from Anaya. Transition us to talking about shared power.
The relationship that my mentor and I have has taught me that collaboration is more important and sharing power is even more important. I think it's important that adults and elders and mentors guide us, don't suffocate us, and join us as we are going through this. Support us.
So I'm going to define the practice of shared power today from Search Institute's Developmental Relationship Framework. Search Institute is an institute that does tons and tons of research on young people and how we can assure positive outcomes for all young people. And they created the developmental relationship framework, which has 5 elements expressed in 20 specific actions that are proven by research and data, including real young people, that are proven to catalyze young people's lives. And those 5 elements are express care, challenge growth, provide support, expand possibilities, and share power. And we are going to be talking about sharing power today. The sharing power involves specific actions such as showing mutual respect, giving young people a voice in decisions, collaborating in solving problems, and creating leadership opportunities for young people. So all of these will be written from the voice of a young person. And when we say share power, or when they say share power, they mean treat me with respect and give me a say. And here are the actions that we can take to share power with our young people. Respect me, take me seriously, and treat me fairly. Include me, involve me in discussions that affect me. Collaborate, work with me to solve problems and reach goals. Let me lead, create opportunities for me to take action and lead. I would love to hear in the chat, of these 4 actions, which do you think you are the best at? Respecting young people, including them, collaborating with them, or letting them. Let me know in the chat what you think of these actions you are the best at. I'd love to just do a little rough poll right there. That's this collaboration. So that means collaborate, inclusion, and Mary. Respect and including from the age. Yes, and I ask us to do this because we're going to transition again in a few slides to kind of a personal assessment. And the developmental relationship framework gives us a lot of opportunities to do that, kind of again reviewing and reflecting these actions. And do I do them? How do I do them, right? How are you currently doing these things with your young people? And where can you potentially grow, right? Which one of these, you don't have to tell me, you can keep it to yourself, but which one of these could you do better at? I doubt all of us are perfect at all of these, right? But thinking about what could you do better at and take that back to your relationship with your young person. So again, this is part of the developmental relationship framework. You see the 5 elements here, and then you see the positive outcomes here as it relates to social emotional competencies, academic outcomes, and what they call thriving indicators. If you are interested in a full training on this topic, please let us know in the training evaluation that you will receive via email after this training. I would love to do that training with you all. I've actually been trained by Search Institute and I love this framework. So if you're interested, please let us know and we will dive into this topic even deeper into all of these elements and how we can act on these elements. I'm going to have another quote if somebody can read for me from Kindle.
All right. My mentor did a great job breaking down those boundaries. Every time I would greet my mentor, he would greet me with, "Hello, my friend." Just can't see that word behind. All right. Just her letting me know that we were in fact friends and that she wasn't just an adult telling me what to do. That meant a lot to me.
Again, we heard these things in the things that you shared from adults growing up, and also this idea of sharing power and things like that. This kind of positive regard that we can do when we're building relationships and how it makes young people feel. And we also have to think about young people don't necessarily, it wouldn't be appropriate necessarily for them to have tons of friendships with adults. A mentor-mentee relationship is very unique, and that opportunity, again, which we're talking about, gives young people spaces for their voice to be honored, for their power to be built, to be a leader in the space, to be respected. Whereas in other spaces, that would not necessarily be appropriate or it just can't happen. So again, this is kind of the potential of mentoring relationships, period. And when we do really effective mentoring relationships by considering things like honoring youth voice and building power. So to go back to what unconditional positive regard is, this is from psychologist Carl Rogers. And the idea is when you have unconditional positive regard for someone, nothing they can do could give you a reason to stop seeing them as human and lovable. So it does not mean you accept everything that they do, right? Or that you approve everything that they do, but that you accept who they are as a person. However, your young person shows up every time you're there to meet them, that you see them as human, you see them as lovable, and you are accepting who they are in that moment. And for those of you who have worked with young people or who may have children, right? Young people aren't always showing up as their best and most lovable selves, it may feel like. And this is, again, that challenge of unconditional positive regard, and the actual practice of doing it can be difficult, right? I would not say that it is easy to do. And again, when we think back to when we were growing up, we might not be able to identify very many adults who treated us with true unconditional regard. So when we consider doing it in our mentoring relationships, it really is a gift that we can give to young people with practice. We want young people to feel safe, feel accepted, and feel that they can be their authentic self with their mentor. And we want to be mindful that a mentoring relationship and mentoring programs and programs that feel safe and feel unconditionally positive regarded to, it can help young people have that space to develop their identity, because young people are growing, young people are dynamic. And the more safe spaces they have, the more likely that they're able to do that and really get into it and really become who they were meant to be. So again, kind of the gift of when we do this, what it can look like for young people on the end of it. So we're going to do a quick practice. We're going to do a personal assessment. So this was adapted from Youth Service, America's Youth and Adults Working Together, Integrating Youth Voice and Leadership into Programs. So this was an assessment for us to assess our relationships with young people. Are we really prepared to practice unconditional positive regard? To reflect on some of our attitudes and points of view and our lens that we bring to young people. So we see the questions on the screen. If you click the link in the chat, it will make you a copy of a document where you can take your notes. Because what I want you to do is to spend a few minutes answering these questions and really getting into it. Why do I want to be a mentor? Do I actually appreciate and seek to understand different perspectives? Do I respect adults and youth equally? And again, I wouldn't say that these questions are easy. This is a personal assessment that we're going to do. So again, when you click that link in the chat, it will open a copy that no one else can see. Only it's a copy on your Google Drive for you to take notes. But I want you to take a few minutes to start to answer those questions, and then we'll move into breakout rooms for you to discuss and with your breakout room friends. So does anybody have any questions about those instructions? Okay, so I'm going to turn on some music, give you about 3 to 4 minutes to answer those questions. And if you want to do it, by hand, hours better for you, feel free to do that. And then I will open breakout rooms for you to connect and talk about these questions as a group. Personal assessment. Yeah, so I would love to hear about what came up in your conversations with each other, what you maybe learned about yourself as you were doing this assessment. Feel free to write in the chat or come off the
I can say in my group, we really were on the same accord in reference to do you respect young people and treat them equally? We were on the same accord, but we also realized that we cannot blur those boundaries, and that we expect young people to make mistakes, but we're not going to take those same mistakes from the adults that we're around.
Yeah, such a good point, right? None of the things that I'm suggesting we do are in spite of boundaries, of appropriate boundaries. And those are still things to uphold. And that is why doing this kind of stuff, like really practicing it, can be more difficult, because we're also maintaining healthy boundaries. And by doing that, we're also teaching the young person how to maintain boundaries as well. Right. Yeah, really, really good. And right, our expectations of our colleagues or our boss will look different than what our expectations are of young people. And again, that those expectations come from the rooted belief they are good, that they have potential, and that we're invested, in their greatness. Any other thoughts from doing this personal assessment and talking with your group? Free to come off or write in the chat.
I had an interesting time responding to the question of, do you focus on potential rather than what you can already do? The question was phrased in a very neutral way, where I almost couldn't tell which was, I don't know, the better thing or what to be striving for, air quotes to that. So my answer to that was, I reinforce current skills, but ultimately emphasize potential and growth areas. And that felt like a positive thing. But yeah, I was just kind of feeling unsure if that was a growth area for myself as a mentor, or if that's a good place to be in with that skill.
Yeah, the interesting point about that question, I've not heard anybody bring that up before. But right, what's the either or, and is it that we do one and not the other, or not? I think it is about finding the balance but also being reminded of potential. Because again, young people are changing and growing and going to reach that potential. So while it is important, especially when we talk about a young person's identity and feeling in relationship with you, of course, affirming what they can already do is important. But you have to do that with also the lens of the potential and helping young people make that connection, right? And that we are encouraging them to grow. There is another training I used to do called, what was it? It was the idea of praise versus encouragement, right? And praise is just talking about this was great, that like this was that, this was that. Whereas encouragement is what helps young people be encouraged to put in the effort and grow and learn. And that is kind of what we're kind of talking like getting about a little bit there, right? That we're doing that affirming and being specific about that, right? Not just like this art is great, but that I saw you put this effort in, like you have this natural talent, and then what does that mean as far as potential and encouraging young people along the way? Yeah, Amanda had the same idea. Yeah, thank you so much. That was really interesting. I thought about that before. Any final thoughts? Feel free to write in the chat or comment off mute. I'm happy to leave you there. Thank you for participating. Again, that Google Doc copy, that's for you. Do with that as you'd like. Feel free to finish that assessment and maybe check in with yourself and do it again in 6 months or a year and have that reflection. But I think that it can be really important. And for those of you who run mentoring programs or maybe screen mentors, these may be good questions for us to get to know about our prospective mentors and mentors coming into our program. So also consider that as a tool when we're getting to know and hoping to recruit mentors. Yeah, George, thanks for showing the chat. All right, thanks. You guys got a lot out. Appreciate it. Okay. So what else can we do? Again, we talked about some actions regarding sharing power and unconditional positive regard. But what else can we do in our practice of continuing to honor your voice? Provide our mentees with choices and respect their choices. But I think we even heard some of your answers earlier, right? We want to give our mentees options in deciding how you will spend your time together and what activities you will do. And of course, that will look different developmentally depending on the age of your young person, right? I always say, I'm not necessarily going to let a 5-year-old decide what we're going to have for lunch because they might just want candy, right? We want to get in that situation. We want to give very specific options. Whereas, for an older teen, that choices and that kind of stuff can look different. So being mindful of that, but always providing choices and options. Because most of the time, young people don't have a lot of choices of how they spend their time, of who's in charge of them. So it can be really powerful to do that. And again, that's another way of sharing power. Be open to learning from your mentee. So again, as a mentor, expressing your genuine enthusiasm and openness to learn from your mentee, that helps break down this natural power dynamic between adults and youth, right? The power dynamic is there when we enter into a relationship. So we want to help to kind of break that down a bit. You as mentors, use your resources, platforms, and networks to find things to connect with your mentee, to elevate your mentee's voice and ideas, and encourage your mentee to lead in actualizing and implementing their ideas and goals. And again, I think this goes back to that kind of question, Charlie, right? That we are actualizing goals and implementing the skills and things they have now to reach further potential. Oh, and another quote from Kindle. Means a lot to me is asking a young person's insight on something. It shows that you really care about their perspective and what they care about, and that you're willing to have conversations with them and willing to learn from them. Showing them that you're viewing them not only as a young person you're teaching things, but a young person who can teach you things. It's extremely important and crucial way to really make your mentee feel like they have a say in the relationship. And this reminds me of, my first mentor, who was a natural mentor who kind of showed up in my life. He was my youth pastor at the time, and I had shared something in the sharing circle. And afterwards, he came up to me and said that he thought what I said was really interesting and had value. And then from there, well, one, I appreciated that because I did not feel, I felt very disempowered as a young person. And I did not feel that wasn't like getting that feedback from other adults. And then from beyond that, he said, I could use your help in planning something, planning this event that he was talking about. And that opportunity to share power, to invite me in, to help him with something, to help an adult with something, was really, really powerful for me, because as a young person, and many young people still have this experience, I felt very disempowered. I thought young people could not do anything, right? I didn't have the power to do anything, to create anything, to lead anything. He really gave me the opportunity. It was really, really mean. I mean, obviously, I'm still talking about it, and it was 20 years ago. So it was really, really powerful. And find the opportunities to do that with a young person, which may look different if we're within the confines of the program. But I encourage you to look for those ways. That is the practice, right? Looking for those opportunities to learn from your mentee and to provide them with choices. Practice proactive listening and actively ask questions and seek interests or seek insights. So listening proactively, asking questions to learn about your mentee's perspective. So again, continue to be curious. And by doing that, it won't keep you from assuming that you know what is best for your mentee. It'll kind of catch you from telling them what to do. So we'll talk a little bit about active listening in an activity coming up. But again, defaulting to asking questions and recentering ourselves to get to know our mentee's perspective and centering that. And then holding you and your mentee accountable for next steps. So right, when we're talking about, if they're talking about a problem that they're having or a goal that they're working on, that you're following up with your mentee after you've worked to discuss that or decided on a course of action, right? That we're learning accountability together. You're creating a plan together and implementing it based on your mentee's feedback. It helps them feel respected, and it shows that you value what they have to say. And that goes beyond simply validating. Validating is incredibly important, right? It's foundational, but it also shows that you're taking the action to support them. And checking in and encouraging mentee feedback. So provide opportunities for your mentee to give you feedback about how you could be a better mentor, right? Whether that's during your mentee meeting or in a written format, asking them, via a letter or text. By asking for that and without ever forcing them to respond, give your mentee time to process how they feel and check in to see if there's something they've been thinking about or what kind of process. We always encourage mentoring programs. So for my program people on the call, we always encourage you to create those feedback loops for mentees. And it's not just about creating the feedback loop, it's about taking the feedback, right? That's how you show that you are really listening, that you take their opinion seriously, and that you're responding accordingly. So again, it's that next step of not just encouraging the feedback, of doing something with it. General pitfalls we want to take into consideration when we think about raising building power. We want to be prepared to be challenged by youth, right? Youth can be challenging for those of us who have been working with them for a long time. As youth find their voice, they will demand to be heard, which is the point, right? But as long as there's mutual respect, it's okay to disagree on approaches or goals. Yes, this is Alfonso Mayo from Mentoring Mentors. If you know, he did a photo shoot with National Mentoring Partnership. But right, it's okay to disagree on approaches or goals when a young person is speaking up. This is where being an active listener and a guide will really help. Because again, a guide is working alongside. If you are working on a project or something like that with a young person, creating norms for decision making may help mitigate some of those challenges when young people are really starting to harness their voice. Check our biases, right? Important for young people to know that their voice, their culture, and identity are all of equal importance to that of anyone else, including yours, right? So we want to be mindful about that. Another Becoming a Better Mentor chapter that is extremely relevant to checking our biases is chapter 2, which is practicing cultural humility, which I encourage you to check out. But again, that we are valuing their voice and everything that is behind their voice, right? You saw my slide earlier, right? Those are all the things informing my voice. And I want to know that the people who I communicate with, value those things and find them to be important. And then lastly, don't patronize, which I imagine we all know, of course. But we want to be mindful that we're not just pretending that we're interested in learning more about our mentees when they're really not. Youth can tell if you are patronizing them. They can tell if you are insincere, if you are inviting their feedback just because you know that you should invite their feedback, right? So we always want to be authentic and ask more questions if we are unsure about what we're trying to learn about our vendors. But again, this is where that practice is. We have to be sincere with our young person and what we're curious to learn about. So again, it's cultivating that curiosity. If you're not curious, you're like, I don't really want to know any more about my mentee than I already do. Well, get curious about that, right? Why are you approaching with that point of view, which is where that person assessment kind of comes in. So being mindful that we avoiding patronizing the internet. Great point, right? Being willing to admit you are wrong or make a mistake. Young people love to know that it is okay to make mistakes, right? We talked about earlier that we expect young people to make mistakes. Young people don't necessarily expect adults to make mistakes because often as adults, we are hiding them from young people for not owning them. But it can be really powerful to acknowledge the mistakes that you have made and try to make that right with your young person. Okay, I want to get into active listening, so we get to our final activity. But active listening it involves, we talked about listening earlier, it came in that kind of first, our little warm up that we did, right? Listening and being heard, and we can do that with active listening. So active listening involves attentively seeking to understand the speaker's message rather than passively hearing the words that a speaker says, right? So we're not just trying to hear what they have to say, we're trying to really understand it. And this is where, again, active listening includes follow-up questions and being curious. Active listeners provide verbal and nonverbal feedback to show their sincere investment in what the speaker is sharing so that, right, our mentee can tell that we are locked in and that we are genuinely invested in what they have to share with us. Again, does this mean that whenever your mentee is listening to you, that they're doing those things to you? Maybe not, right? But that we are owning our piece, which is to be active listeners, which is to give them physical and verbal attention when they are sharing with us, because it is valuable for young people to share with us. And many other adults in their lives aren't getting that from them. So again, this is what's special about a mentor-mentee relationship. And what we know about active listening is it can help to build trust with that conversation and thereby allow the speaker, the young person, to communicate more easily, openly, and honestly. And that, is the goal, is for honest communication between mentor and mentee. So we're going to talk a little bit more about active listening, and we're going to hear an example of really good active listening, and then we'll break it down a little bit. So we're going to listen to a story from StoryCorps. We're going to hear from a teacher, Celeste Davis Carr, and her student, Aaron. Aaron shared a story with his teacher. You're going to hear a little bit about that and then hear the follow-up story interview. So I'm going to play that clip in just a second, but I'm also going to share the transcript. There's no captions or anything, so I want to make sure that nobody misses it. But I'm going to play this story now, and we're kind of going to answer these questions afterwards. So be mindful of what you are hearing in this story. Make sure that my sound is up. Again, the transcript is in the chat.
Hi, my name is Aaron. I am attending Corliss High School. I'm just going through a rough time. Basically homeless for 5 months. I had to sleep outside, sometimes with nothing to eat. It's kind of ashamed. I still am ashamed.
It was only after hearing that recording that Aaron's teacher, Celeste Davis Carr, learned that he was living on the streets. They recently sat down face-to-face to talk about Aaron's struggles.
When you shared your StoryCorps recording with everyone, how did you feel, Aaron?
I felt awkward, like a big load was let off. Because, I just said it. I don't know what made me say it, but I'm like, let me just be honest and just get it out.
I was scared because I felt helpless. I didn't know what to do. But at the same time, I felt I had an obligation to try my best to help you.
Yeah, I didn't even know you actually listened to that one.
I listened to all of them, Aaron.
Yeah, I didn't really think that I would ever tell a teacher, but it makes me know that you're special because you care. Like, you talk to me and make sure that I'm cool. Because sometimes kids were bullying me, call me a freak of nature, throwing chairs, throwing glass and stuff at me.
I've had to deal with some bullying issues when I was in school, but not to the extent that you have. I was always picked on because I was a tomboy.
You seem pretty cool. I didn't think no one would mess with you.
So overall, how do you feel? You have more friends this year?
Yes, I have more friends this year.
So it's better than last year.
Yeah. I'm in the foster home now. Been since October.
Do you feel different living in a foster home?
It's good, actually. I feel comfortable where I am now. It kind of feels like home.
So can I tell you one thing that I really admire about you, Aaron? Because I've never told you. Do you know that how strong you are?
No.
You never realized that.
No.
But you have a strength that no matter what anyone says about you or they do to you, you don't change who you are as a person. And a lot of people don't have that strength. So I admire that about you.
Thank you.
Don't make me cry again. Okay? I want to see you happy. Just your smile is the best moments of you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
Gives me every time. So yeah, I think we could agree that there's some really good active listening going on. And yes, Lonnie, that it was a lot, right? He shared some serious stuff. I want you to think about, Celeste, who is our active listening model in this story. Why do you think it was powerful for her to listen to Aaron and his story? And how did she show Aaron that she was really listening to him? I'm going to come up here right in the chat.
I guess for me, it wasn't the fact of that story, because he couldn't even believe that she heard that story, but she listened to all of his stories. And she let him know that I hear you and I see you.
Yeah, right. There were a few different ways that she did that, right? She affirmed, right, I'm listening to all of your stories. And then we also heard her talk about things that she saw in him and knew about him, right? That he was strong, that she remembered what she learned about in his stories and expressed care alongside doing it as well. Yeah, taking action and its impact on her perception of him, right? What she acknowledged when she learned about him from those stories and made it clear that she valued that sharing, because it obviously seems obvious that it was not easy. Right? She didn't just listen, she took action.
I, in response to how did Celeste show Aaron that she was really listening to him, I think she did a great job of leveling with Aaron. There was like a moment in there where like they both cracked a joke with each other, and it felt very appropriate for the moment while still, of course, continuing on with the heavy nature of the topic. And then she even shared her own experience that she had in childhood of being bullied about something. But all the while, she still kept that role of being an adult who was in a mentor role and not a peer. And I think those were all some ways that she showed she was listening and providing her support.
Right, she kept him centered even when she was sharing her own story, right? And it was about that, really about more about that affirming and that she really heard his story. And why do you think it was important for Aaron, that his teacher listened to him in his story?
There
I
comes a
personally
time.
think it was important because he trusted her. And he said that, she always made sure that he was okay and that he didn't need anything. And that was important for him. He trusted her, so he believed that she would be the listening ear that he needed.
Yeah, right. It helped build trust. What we've been talking about, the benefits of doing this is building trust and having trust in that relationship. And it seems like he was in an insecure situation, which also maybe there's not a lot of other adults that he can really trust. I heard someone else starting to come off. If you'd like to finish your thought.
This is Jeanette. I think it was important that she was listening and reacting, that she didn't minimize his experience, which I think is very important. So she understood that what he was going through was tough, and she let him know that. And I think that's because very oftentimes we minimize what our young people are going through. Ah, you get over that or whatever. And she didn't do that. And relating to his experience by sharing hers, she also let him know that his experience was different than hers. So although they had the bullying, his was a lot more severe than hers. So she was making it very clear that, I experienced, but not what you went through. So, it was different. So I think that was important in showing that she really was listening to him, but then understood that even her experience didn't compare to his. So never minimize any of his feelings or anything that he ever went through was very important.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that second part up, right? That we often minimize young people, right? And when we often hear a story that we can relate to, we can do that to minimize, right? Well, I was bullied too, and I got through it, or whatever, which might be true. And maybe you were bullied as much as he was, but that differentiating it is that we are not having the exact same experiences as our young people, even if we can find something similar that happened to us in the past. The fact of the matter is, young people are young people right now, and we are not. And so all of their experiences are different than the experience that we have had as young people. So that differentiating is really important because, again, we're centering the young person story, and that we're not minimizing it in any ways, even if, we know that they have the potential to overcome, right? We still don't want to minimize something that is difficult that a young person might be going. Yes, thank you so much. Great thoughts in the chat, which I will also aim to save for us all by keeping the students' needs priority. I want us to get through this last activity, but these questions I want you to kind of take with you that you can even add on to that assessment to, again, kind of evaluate our own kind of skills as it relates to active listening. And to do another bit of reflection. But I'll leave that for you to take with you because I want us to do one more breakout and get into the case study. So this is a case study that is in the book. There are actually multiple state case studies in this chapter. And when you click on that link in the chat, it will take you to a document. And actually, let me just bring it over and show you all. It will take you to this document where we have the case study here, which I'm going to ask you when you get to your group to read as a group. And then if you are group one, you're going to answer your questions and write your answers here in group one. As you scroll down, you'll see the different groups. So as long as that link is working for everyone, which it seems that folks are there, I'm going to pause our recording, open breakout rooms, and give you, my goal is at least 7 minutes to read through the story and answer some questions. Okay. Yes, I would love to hear about your takes on Sandy and Marie. Some of the questions that we guys discussed. We're come up to you or just share in the chat. What's going on with Sandy and Marie?
I think we were group two. And one of our questions is, why does Sandy not feel comfortable with her mentor, Marie, to share about her life? Well, Sandy don't feel comfortable, so all Marie did was talk. Marie talked too much. And she didn't listen. She needed to shut up. But she talked entirely too much. And I think at some point, and we talked about this in the group, Sandy just went along to get along. So she kind of checked out, but she just participated because it was something to do.
Right. It was the expectation, so she showed up and things like that. Right, and maybe I didn't mention this enough. We're talking about active listening. Right, it is less talking, and the talking that you are doing is to prompt the other person to talk more, right? By asking questions and giving that space. And especially with young people, they may need more space to come to their answers, time to think. And that's a really important part of.
And she asked her the same things over and over. Every time they met, she asked her the same thing. It was nothing different. And like one of the ladies said in my group, it felt fake.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And then that authenticity piece, as I hope we've continued to harp on, is really important. And right, why would I open up and share with someone who seems phony? Or Randy talked about, right? The why of their relationship. So again, that was one of the questions in our assessment, right? Why did she become a mentor? Right? And are there any biases there that could have been kind of checked or faced by both of them? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Renee, this is Jeanette. Basically, the mentor needs some mentor training. I'm sorry. She might have some good intentions, but she doesn't know how to be a mentor to a 13-year-old girl. And she may have a lot of stuff to offer, but that might not be what that child needs right now.
Yep.
So they're just learning how to be quiet and connect with the young person, to share that space, to not be the authority figure. I mean, you talked about that in the training. You got to share the power here. The child didn't feel like she had any power whatsoever. And anytime you're intimidated by your mentor and afraid to tell them something because you don't want them to be mad, it's not a good relationship. So it's obvious she might have good intentions, but not everybody knows how to be a mentor.
Right.
So, Renee, get in with some training.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's a good point. And one of the purposes of this resource, right, is that mentors are teachable, coachable, learnable, and with the right tools and resources, she could grow in this area because likely she does have something to offer and doesn't know how to offer it in an effective way. And our goals, especially, recruitment is tough. When people are coming in, we want to prep them and get them as ready as possible because we may have a limited option of the number of mentors we're able to expose to our youth to. So yeah, it's really important. I think I saw someone raise their hand.
Yes, that was me. Miss Jeanette, I'm so glad you said what you said because someone in our group had made a statement, and and I don't like to really disagree with people, but I had to disagree that that Sandy was the best mentor for Marie because she was a lawyer, and I'm like, no, just because it doesn't matter what you do for a living. If it's not a match, it's not a match. And I don't know if they had the interview beforehand or they just gave her to as a mentor to the child, but it needs to be that match, and it needs to gel first before you take it full time.
Yeah, no, really good point, right? And that's context that we don't have in this situation, right? But would be nice to know as far as what are we going to do next, right? Is this a relationship that is repairable? If we could go back in time, what would we do different as it relates to matching and mentor prep? So I think all of that, are really, really good takeaways. Right, so there appeared to be some assumption of the purpose of Marie's mentoring, like being the sage, so she already knows what Sandy means without affirming Sandy. Yes, this is something we also call the writing reflex, right? Where the adults assume that they know what's best and that they should tell the young person what's best, even if they've not really built a relationship with the young person to take the advice or ask for the advice, right? Does the mentee want to hear your advice? And do you have a trusting relationship where they would even take it if you gave it, which is really, really important and something that we need to think about. We are at the end of our time. And I want to say I really, really appreciate this group and everything that you shared this evening. Again, it makes these sessions more rich. And I feel like there's a lot of new folks that maybe I don't know on this call. So I'm happy to all meet you and hope we see you again. Again, the training evaluation will come to you via email. So don't worry about scanning the QR code or anything like that. But I want to remind about one more thing that has just been released. So if you work at a mentoring program, we are going to ask you to fill out this survey. So this survey has been put together by the National Mentoring Partnerships Research Board, and it is for you all out there doing the work. So for us to get insight about what it's like doing the work right now, what brought you to the work, your satisfaction with the work, what we can do to help support the work. So if you work at a mentoring program, we hope that you will fill out the survey. We will be able to pull the regional data it's a national survey, but we'll be able to pull the regional data for Maryland and DC. So I'll send this in the follow-up as well, but we would love to hear what you have to say. And I'll close this out there. You will get these slides and the recording and a transcript probably a week from today is my goal there, as well as the friendly badge. So yeah, Nikki, I agree. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, everybody, for sharing. I hope to see you at another Mentor Maryland DC event. Please keep in touch. And again, you will hear from me in a week, so I'll talk to you all soon.